Welcome to the Essential 99 Punctuation Rules for Court Reporters, video number 21, Quotation Marks, Part 1. I'm Ken Wick. Let's get started. This video covers quotation marks and ebook rules 35 to 38, which are a direct quotation and capitalization, or capitalization with direct quotes, signal phrases with direct quotes, a colon before direct quotation, and quote, close quote. Rule 35, use quotation marks to enclose a direct quotation. That's what someone says or in a document. Capitalize the first word of a direct quotation if the quotation is one or more complete sentences. So Amy said, and then this is a direct quote, or she said. So now this person is directly quoting. Amy, not Bill, illegally accessed the checking account. So since we have a complete sentence, within the quotes we capitalize it. James replied, "Who said that lie?" So James, this is what James said. He said a complete sentence, therefore it's capitalized. The report states this. So it's directly quoting from the report. We arrived at the scene at 7:34 a.m. We contacted the homeowner and searched the property. So since the direct quotation is one or more sentences, we capitalize it. Signal phrases. So separate introductory, interrupting, and concluding signal phrases. Now what's a signal phrase? I'm going to get to that. And the key word is phrase. So this is sort of a signal phrase at the beginning, or interrupting, coming in the middle, or coming at the end. From direct quotations with commas. Omit the comma if there is a question mark or period where the separating comma would be placed. So signal phrases are phrases, not complete sentences, that contain the verbs usually said. This is very common to say said. That contain the verbs said, asked, responded, stated, replied, yelled, screamed, or other verbs. It's showing that the person is that basically the verb is showing it's a direct quotation. Look at these. Someone said something, someone asked something, someone responded, someone stated, someone replied, yelled, screamed. So an introductory signal phrase. This means the signal phrase comes before the quote. The manager said. So here we have a signal phrase. It is a phrase, not a complete sentence. And we separate it from the direct quotation with a comma. If the quotation goes on, put a comma and then continue. Tammy emailed. So once again, this verb emailed is showing a direct quotation from a document. And then we have a direct quotation from the document, so we separate it with a comma. The boss yelled. Yelled, the verb yelled is showing, once again, this is a direct quotation. And then, so we separate with a comma. We have the direct quotation, and now the sentence continues, so we put a comma. And then the rest of the sentence. And we'll get to that the comma goes inside the close quote. Counsel directly asked. So this is once again, this verb asked is a signal phrase. And then we have the direct quote, and then the sentence continues. Now normally we would put a comma right where this question mark is, but the rule says if we have we don't need the comma if there is a period or a question mark. So since this is a question mark, no comma. And it looks strange if you think about it. It looks strange to have a question mark and then a comma. Those two, you don't have those two in combination. concluding signal phrases. So this is where the signal phrase occurs at the end of the sentence. So that means a quote comes first. It's time to go. Excuse me. The manager said. So this said is a signal or a signal phrase. So we need to separate it from the quote. So we have the quote, comma, the manager said. So we separate the signal phrase from the quote with a comma. Note that the comma goes inside the quotation mark. And that's another rule, but it's good to notice it now. Who said that lie? James asked. So here we would normally put the asked as a signal phrase. We need to separate the signal phrase from the quote. Normally, right where this question mark would go, we'd put a comma. But remember the rule: if we have a comma or period, we don't put the comma. We just put the question mark. Interrupting signal phrases. So this is where you have the quote, and it'll be interrupted by the signal phrase, and then the quote continues. So, I'm traveling. Tom whispered. Whispered is, I didn't list this verb, but this is a indication that someone said directly. This is indicating what someone actually said. Tom whispered. I'm traveling, Tom whispered, to Chicago for business next week. So, we need to separate the signal phrase from the quotation with commas. So we have the quote, the comma. Note that the comma goes inside the quotation marks. We have the signal phrase, then comma, and then the rest of the quote. So basically we're separating the signal phrase from the quotation mark with commas. Notice if it's coming in the middle, we're putting commas on both sides. If it's occurring at the beginning or the end, you just get one comma. I really like the plan, Mary replied. So replied is a signal phrase, so we'll need to separate it from the rest of the quote. So the quote, really like the plan, comma, Mary replied. Now normally a comma would come right here, but this is the end of a sentence. So we put the period, because the quote, this is where the period would occur with a quote. However, I have a few changes. So instead of a comma, we put a period, because normally the period would have come here, but it's where the signal, but we have to tack on the signal phrase. Maybe just to back up and say, why isn't this a period here? And Mary replied, comma, because it doesn't really make sense. I really like the plan. Mary replied, comma, however, it doesn't really happen that way. So we're going to put the concluding, this is going to be a concluding or an interrupting phrase with the period here. We'll separate the signal phrase from the quote with the comma. No signal phrase. Basically, there's no signal phrase. I disagree with Tom that we are just evolved animals. There's no replied, said, whatever. This is someone is quoting some words. But since there's no signal phrase, we don't put a comma. And another one, the reference states the effects are minimal with the dosage. So there's no, you say, well, this states, but it really is, the word that is actually dropped. It should be the references states that the effects. This is a key that if you usually have this word that, you're not doing a direct quotation. You're not doing a signal phrase. So there is no signal phrase. Therefore, there's no comma. It's almost like this little snippet of a couple of words is being worked into the sentence. That's really what's going on here. So rule 37, the colon before the quotation mark, or we just discussed, that you put separate the direct quotation with a comma, but sometimes we have a colon before a quotation mark. So why would we use a colon before a quotation mark? Well, here's when you use a colon before a quotation mark. Use a colon before a quotation if 1, an independent clause introduces the quotation, or 2, the quotation is more than one sentence. If you actually looked at the earlier example, you'll actually see that if you actually go to the beginning of this video that the quote was actually more than one sentence. So I want to state this is the GMR rule. Both the LMEG and BGGP state to separate a direct quotation with commas. CMOS supports the first case, the independent clause. And then another difference in the LMEG, it says to separate a formal quotation, that's talking about legal or historical documents, speeches, etc., with a colon. So this is a specialty. So if you want to follow LMEG, then you would separate a quotation from a document or a speech, like a formal speech, because you're thinking, well, it wasn't speech, a direct quotation is someone speaking, but they're talking like, a presidential address or something like that, or a debate. And the BGGP states that a colon may replace a comma if the quotation is, quote, very long or very formal. It explains that formal is a judgment call, and very long refers to a block formatted quotation. Block formatted quotation is if you've ever read a book and there's a lengthy quotation of about 4 or 5 or more lines, you often will see that start in a new indented paragraph, and you would have a colon before that introducing that separated block quote that's indented. So that's what it's referring to a block formatted quotation. So some examples. Counsel made a very good statement to the jury. See, this is a complete sentence. Since we have a complete sentence introduction, we put a colon. Gather facts and decide the case in the deliberation room. Now the LMEG and BGGP would just use a comma in this. Well, hold on, back up. It's a complete sentence. Nope, sorry, I was thinking of CMOS. Should just rely on my own notes. The LMEG and the BGGP would just use a comma here. It would not use a colon, but a colon is used per the Gregg's Reference Manual. So I guess if you want to follow LMEG or BGGP, you just put a comma. Mrs. Anderson said, colon, and the reason we put a colon here is that the rest of this quotation is it's more than one sentence, so we put a colon. And the LMEG and the BGGP would just use a comma, so it would just say, Mrs. Anderson said, comma, and then it would just go on. So you can follow, if you want to follow the Gregg's Reference Manual, you'll have it as I have it in the rule, or you can just use a comma to separate them per LMEG and BGGP. Your choice. Quote, close quote. Separate spoken punctuation, that's quote, unquote, open quote, end quote, close quote, quote unquote, etc., with commas. Use both the spoken punctuation and quotation marks. So the LMEG, you don't know, this Rule 38 is really, this is the BGGP rule. The Gregg Reference Manual does not even comment on this because this is more about spoken English, or recording spoken words. So basically what you have here is you have a rule, and the LMEG and the BGGP are the exact opposite. They say the exact opposite things of what to do. So LMEG says either one, separate the spoken punctuation with commas, which is what I say, separate the spoken punctuation with commas, with no quotation marks. So it's basically saying write the spoken punctuation with no quotation marks, or use quotation marks without the spoken punctuation. Do not use both spoken punctuation and quotation marks. Like I said, the BGGP is just this rule. You write both the spoken punctuation and the quotation marks. And I'll skip the debate of, writing spoken punctuation and things like that. That's good for if you want to debate that on the forums. But basically, their LMEG and the BGGP are in direct opposite rule, and you can't go to any other authority. You can't look this up in CMOS or GRM because they don't address this situation. So you're sort of left at two authoritative references at directly opposed to each other. And if you want to know, actually, if you go to the reference version of the book, my reference, you'll actually see me look up different transcripts and a poll of what people are doing and why I actually decided to use the BGGP format. So, examples is I told him to, quote, solve, close quote, the problem. So here you're writing the spoken punctuation, which is separated with commas, and you're using the quotation marks around the quote. LMEG would write this, I told him to, quote, you just don't use the quotation marks if you want to write out the spoken punctuation. Or you do it this way in the LMEG. You drop the spoken punctuation, you put the quotes. So this is the top line is how the BGGP would write it and how I'm telling you to write it. Or LMEG says do one of these two formats. Next example is he said, quote unquote, I don't live there anymore. So write this spoken punctuation and use quotation marks around the direct quotation. Once again, LMEG, you would write the spoken punctuation without the quotes, or you would drop the spoken punctuation and put in the quotation marks. The beginning of that section reads quote and then the quote here. Oh. So I guess I should have put, if you're doing this in LMEG, you would just put, you would drop the quote. So the beginning of the section reads, and then just have the quote. So you delete the quote comma, or you'd say the section reads quote, and then you drop the quotation marks. So that's it for this video. Please subscribe. If you liked the video, please hit like, and please buy the ebook. Thank you.